What is up? It's NFL Week 13. All the injuries are piling up everywhere. The inactive list is ridiculous, and we haven't even hit noon yet. But that's why we play DFS. They're not such a big concern when it comes to DFS. If you're just tuning in recently, the show time has changed. It is DFS and Chill. This is Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show. We were on Thursday nights, and we realized that was just terrible for everyone's schedule. So we are now Sundays at 11 a.m. helping you build those lineups right up until noon, and then you have all that time to go make some money. With me, as always, my DFS captain, back fresh off of the IR. So glad to have her back. What is up, Kyra Wiaterowski?
What is up, guys? That's right. I'm back. I'm trying to get back to my old self as good as I could. I mean, I'm a little more out of breath, so I've limited my amount of players that I keep picking. So you don't have to worry about me picking like 4 dudes in my columns. But yeah, I missed the podcast last Sunday. It really sucked. But if you do follow me on Twitter, I've been dealing with a little chest infection, so I sound a little more with a little more bass in my voice than usual. But no big deal. We're here now, and we're here with friend of the show, Clinton. I hope I say your last name right. Is it Clinton Holmgren?
Mm-hmm.
All right, nice. Well, Clinton, certified badass DFS player and all around good guy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, you can find me obviously at Clinton Holmgren. Thanks for having me on the show today. It's really exciting. Really cool to guest. All my works, you can find me at idpguys.org. Do a lot of offensive work. I do a weekly DFS article, do a show on Wednesday nights. I've just jumped in the DFS space this year. It's kind of fresh for me. I've been playing it for years, but decided to start writing and, doing some video and things like that with it. I love it mostly because, like you said, injuries don't really affect it. You can keep playing and you can do what you want with it. But yeah, at Twitter, at Clinton Holmgren. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Last week, just to give you guys some behind the scenes, we've been trying to get Clinton on the show for the last 3 weeks. And a couple weeks ago, he got great tickets to a football game. 2 weeks ago, last week, we lost Kyra. So things went in. But following Clinton on Twitter, I was able to make some great DFS plays. You should be following both of these people because they are wonderful when it comes to space and they help me set great lineups every week. A couple of quick housekeeping things before we jump into it. This is a DFS focused show. We will focus on the main slate. If you ask questions in the chat regarding redraft, I will more than likely just answer them in the chat. If they have a little bit of DFS queue to them where we can maybe compare 2 wide receivers and we happen to be talking about wide receivers, I might kick it over to these guys. But if it's redraft, I'll probably answer it. Also, if you are following us on Twitter, or please follow us on Twitter. But if you are joining us on Twitter, I would recommend kicking over to YouTube. If you haven't heard me say it before, StreamYard and Twitter are not playing well together. We are not ignoring you in the Twitter chat. We just can't see anything that you're putting in there. On YouTube, we see everything. We get to everything. So those are the housekeeping. And as I mentioned, we are going to cover the DFS main slate. We start with quarterbacks, and I like to start with the negative. We call it chalk burn. It's which high dollar or high percentage player is going to burn you. Normally, I would kick to my co-host right away, but Kyra, you put in your boy, Jalen Hurts, which shocked me to begin with, but it really doesn't matter anymore. So Clinton, talk us through Lamar Jackson, and then Kyra, I'll let you chime in on Lamar as well.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. I think he's $8,500 on FanDuel, $7,800 on DraftKings. He's only played Pittsburgh 2 times in his career. Last year was 1 game because of COVID, and then he was, I think, sick another time before, inactive. But he's thrown 5 interceptions against them in his career already in the 2 games that they've played. I think they've won one of them and lost the other. I just don't like him this week. He's too expensive for me to put him out there, and I like that Pittsburgh defense, even if they are a little banged up here and there. But I'm not a fan of Lamar Jackson this week.
Kyra, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, my chalk burn was initially Jalen Hurts, so that sucks, and I kept him up there just because they were really iffy about whether or not he was going to play up until seriously still now. I think there's
I was going to say even now, because it wasn't there was someone who reported he was out, and then Shefty countered that report and said that they're going to run it up to game time. So
yeah, so that's annoying. And Jalen Hurts said he was going to play earlier in the week, so the reports are everywhere. So if he does play, I am still off of Jalen Hurts. We won't keep it really that long for you because I don't think he's going to play. But yeah, Lamar Jackson, definitely a good candidate for chalk burn. Like he said, he's only played them twice in his career, which is really weird. Seems It's impossible almost.
Yeah, it feels like Lamar's been around forever at this point.
Yeah,
so.
and he hasn't. But yeah, he hasn't done really well. And honestly, the offense hasn't really been playing that great either. They haven't put up many points in the last couple of games. They might be winning, but they're just not really rolling. So I could see this game being like a defensive slugfest, and it's just terrible. Not really a lot of high upside. So yeah, Lamar Jackson's a great call for that. I also want to say, I know my shirt that I'm wearing today could be like iffy, but
oh my, yes.
No jokes if my hair goes somewhere weird. Okay.
Okay.
I just realized what I've done. So
well, even better is I'm going to keep an eye on it now, and I'll have Josh clip it for us if we get some wonderfulness in there. All right, guys. So if we're not starting Lamar Jackson, we clearly need to start quarterbacks. And I have to be honest, when I looked at the slate, I was shocked at how many quarterbacks I liked. And our boy Mojo jumped in, and Mojo, as you always do, you've pretty much predicted what everyone's about to say here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Kyra. Kyra, who is your favorite play or plays, because you're you, at quarterback this week?
I am me for sure. So I do have two plays. It's going to be Justin Herbert and Tom Brady. Actually, for me, there's no quarterback on this slate that was like a particular glaring value to me. So being a quarterback in just one of the three games that have close to a 50-point over-under is the route I'm going to go with Justin Herbert. I think this game is going to be super competitive, and we love Justin Herbert in a competitive game script. He's had over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. He's also been putting up some rushing numbers over the last 2 weeks, 126 total yards. I think he just gives us solid upside on this slate. And Brady is Brady. I mean, for obvious reasons, it's a good matchup. I just think he might be a little bit chalky because he is actually the one glaring value on the slate where you're like, oh yeah, I got to get Tom Brady in here. So I think a lot of people are going to think like that. So he's obviously a good play. He's worth mentioning, unless we get another Leonard literally 4 net game going on, which could happen. And he's a good pivot. If he is chalky, then you do want to get Leonard Fournette in there. But Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, easy picks for me this week.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those. I'm really thinking that Bengals-Chargers game could be a high-scoring game. Clinton, you have a guy who is just flies under the radar every week in fantasy, but seems to get the job done. So
yeah, all the time. Yeah, and actually, like those plays, if I weren't, I'm going with Kirk Cousins this week, but if I weren't Herbert, Brady would probably be my other number one option this week.
Okay.
I like Cousins this week. He didn't have a great game against the Lions earlier this year. I think he had a touchdown and 275 yards. It was one of their lower scoring games of the season. But historically, just last year alone, he had, I think, 625 yards and 6 touchdowns against the Lions. He's
work.
over. Yeah. He throws that ball around. And I think this week they're gonna go away from the run. I don't think they're gonna run Madison as much as people want them to, and people are going to be disappointed by playing Madison. He might get that one, goal line touchdown or whatever, but I think we're going to see, 300 to 350 yards from Cousins this week and 3 touchdowns. I think it's a big week for him.
I say it's a bold prediction because, we're going to get into Chuck Byrne at running back, but Madison is a guy who's probably going to end up very chalky this week. Would you two agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a couple running backs on the slate that are going to be super chalky that I have a couple pivots off of. I know that I have one that's going to be super chalky in my deep sea dive, but with good reason. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So yeah, Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, great plays, but sometimes you got to go cheap at quarterback. I was a little surprised to see yours, Clinton. I like the Indianapolis defense, but I also recognize what Tyrod Taylor can get done with his legs.
Yeah, I like him a lot this week. Indy, I think they're the 7th. They've given up the 7th most points against quarterbacks. A couple guys have had some pretty big success against him this year. And to me, 5,300 on DraftKings and 7,700 on FanDuel. To me, it's worth a risk if you don't want to play those chalky quarterbacks, where then you can, pivot and play 2 of the bigger running backs if you want. Or, I'm staying away from the big name, I think, wide receivers this week, except for one. So by putting Tyrod in there, my thought on that is that you can play some of the more expensive running backs, even a Jonathan Taylor in a mixing combination if you wanted to, on your slate or whatever. But I like him. He's progressed. I put him in there the first week he got back, and that burned me. He didn't do anything. But the last 2 weeks he's looked pretty decent out there. And there, and then a guy that you can look at that he's starting to connect with a little bit is Brevin Jordan at tight end, and we're going to talk about him later. But and that's just an extra added piece because he's a lot like a receiver, and Tyrod is getting some extra weapons there with Cook and Nico Collins. They're not running the ball, so.
And with David Johnson very likely out this week, that's less incentive for them to run the ball. So yeah, that could be a nice play. Kyra, do you have thoughts on Tyrod?
Yeah, I think he's a great deep sea dive this week. I mean, I know he sounds ugly. He's not someone you're like excited to play, but if you want to save at the position, he does just enough that he gets you enough points. You could fill other position slots and make up for whatever extra points he's not getting you.
Yeah, one thing I've learned about just being with you guys on this show is you can build lineups around what you believe a game script's going to be. And Clinton, you hit something on the head that if you start a guy like Tyrod Taylor, you could start a Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon. And if it's going to be a huge Jonathan Taylor game, it's likely to be a huge Tyrod Taylor game. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I didn't even make the connection there. But anyway,
It's a good bring back. If you're going to play Tyrod Taylor, then you should have Jonathan Taylor in your running back slot.
There you go. And Kyra, you have a favorite deep sea dive that I was very happy to see. I'm not going to lie to people. I built a lot of my cash lineups around Derek Carr this week. So
yeah, I do love Derek Carr this week in this game. He's another one of those 3 matchups with a nearly 50-point over-under. He's cheaply priced and going up against the football team who gives up the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. They've also allowed the most passing touchdowns this season. So this should project to be a pretty high-scoring game. And according to some statistics I'm about to rattle off here from PFF, this game sets up for the Raiders to get some positive regression in the touchdown department. The Raiders rank 2nd in passing yards this season, but just 14th in passing touchdowns. So this is a good bounce back spot for Derek Carr to get a couple touchdowns in this game. I like him stacked with a lot of people this week. I like Hunter Renfro. I like Foster Morale. We're going to talk about him later. And even Deshaun Jackson is a cool little dart throw that I want to put out there on.
Yes.
Be able to stack him. But if you're going to play Derek Carr, I don't like him as like a one-off. I would stack him with at least Hunter Renfro or the tight end Foster Morale.
Yeah, just to throw out a tweet, I did a little research this week. Deshaun Jackson in revenge games averages like 15
that's my narrative
points per game.
I saw that, yeah.
You want every bit of the Deshaun Jackson. Don't worry about that questionable tag next to his name. So with quarterback guys, you're avoiding Jalen Hurts, but you were avoiding Jalen Hurts anyway. You're avoiding Lamar Jackson. You are playing Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins. And if you are diving deep because you want to start some stud running backs, you are playing Derek Carr. You are playing Tyrod Taylor. Same song, second verse. Let's jump into running backs. So the chalk burn, again, are players that are high roster percentage, high dollars that are likely to burn players this week. Again, this is a DFS-focused show. So we're not telling you not to start these guys in your redraft leagues. We're just saying they may not necessarily be worth what you're paying in DFS. I'm going to start with Clinton because, Kyra, you mentioned running backs you want to move off, but you gave me none in the sheet. So I'm going to start with Clinton, and then, Kyra, I'll just let you take over at that point. So.
Yeah, you basically said that it's a great running back slate, and it is. There is one guy I don't like. He's too expensive this week for me, and that's Naji Harris. He is the one expensive back I'm not going to play. I just, I don't know. I don't know what it is about him this week. I think it's a game script thing, even if it's a close smash mouth kind of game between them. I think Pittsburgh's going to throw more. I think there's, so if there is a weakness for Baltimore, you can throw on them a little bit, especially we're going to get to it later, but a guy like Pat Freiermuth, I think Deontay Johnson has been really good lately. And I feel like the game script's just going to go Pittsburgh throwing the ball, and that might benefit Naji too. He might get 5 or 6 catches out of the backfield, but he's just too expensive for me. And I think there's a lot of better options out there this week, matchup wise. He's at 8,000 on FanDuel, 7,700 on DraftKings, and that's too expensive for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it feels like there are a lot of very good options at running back. When I was building kind of like my base, I was shocked at how many I was able to add there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of those we've kind of already touched on this. Madison is going to be a very chalky guy, and he may end up with a 15-point match where it's not a great play. You're not necessarily avoiding him, but it may not be the big reward that people are expecting out of a guy like Alexander Madison this week. Okay. Kyra, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Harris, first of all, and then do you have anybody you want to add?
Yeah, no, I agree that Naji, there's just so many good running back plays this week that, you don't have to try to fit in somebody as expensive as Naji in your lineup when there's so much more of a value. Even the Alexander Madison thing, I think he is going to be super chalky. People are going to expect him to put up the 30 points that he put up last time they played Detroit. We see what somebody did the last game, and we think it's just going to repeat itself, but things change, everything, we could see a repeat of a similar performance, but we could also see, you know, everybody flock to an Alexander Madison too chalky, and he ends up not being, you know, he is a backup for a reason. We always say that. So, yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that. As for my favorite plays this week, my expensive play, you know, I don't usually like to give us an expensive dollar play, but I really like Joe Mixon this week, and Mixon is definitely my pay up option. He's projected at a lower rostership than, you know, guys like Jonathan Taylor, anybody like that. Mixon's going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. They've been extremely giving to the running back position. I think I said that I think this is going to be a high scoring game, and they give up the third most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. So he's a pretty easy option for me. I think that with all the really good options, not a lot of people are going to go Mixon's direction, especially when there's so many cheap options. My value play is going to be James Conner. He should be in positive game script and continue to be the touchdown machine that we've all come to know and love. There's still no Chase Edmonds there. He's just too cheap for what he does. But I could easily list so many names here. There's honestly a ton of value plays this week. Running back is where it's at. So one false move, you know, and someone's going to break that slate with a really cheap play. But hopefully those guys will get you there.
I was going to say, and Clinton's guy is a guy who I think has slate breaking potential if things fell the right way. So Clinton, talk to us about Eli Mitchell.
Yeah, Eli Mitchell, I do think, you know, that's probably pretty chalky this week due to his game last week against the Vikings where he just torched them once for like 130 yards or something. But I just expect San Fran with Debo out, they're going to run the ball out again this week. You know, Eli's at 76 on FanDuel, 6,000 on DraftKings. He's completely undervalued this week. They're going to run him 25 times again, 20 to 25 times, I think. That Seattle gives up the second most points to running backs. You're guaranteed him to have, well, I shouldn't say guaranteed, but it's about as close as you can get this week. You know, with him, you know, getting that quality work, and he's one of the guys you can trust this week to get that 20 carries. And I like to mix and play a lot. I think his price is high, but still doesn't get the respect he's deserved this year. Yeah. He's a money play every week. I have no problem putting, you know, Mixon in there you could pair him with a guy like Eli if you have a cheaper quarterback, you know, or you want to go cheap value at wide receiver this week too. But yeah, I like Eli a lot this week.
And so you guys have hit on some interesting points because we keep saying there's so many good running backs this week. Is there a concern? And again, I always kind of throw this out once per show. I'm a novice DFS player. I'm great at redraft. I have no problem with my ego saying something like that. But with DFS, I miss roster percentages quite a bit. With this many great running backs, is there a chance that they start to cancel each other out and we're not dealing with a lot of chalk on certain guys? Because like Madison's undervalued because they didn't know what was going to happen with Cook early on in the week. Eli Mitchell's undervalued, and we can't discount what Deebo Samuel has done. He's, I think, stole 3 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 games. And if those fall back to the running back now, we've seen this team produce a 4-touchdown game out of running backs. Leonard Fournette is a guy who's probably going to be rostered quite a bit. Jonathan Taylor, while high, everybody wants a piece of Jonathan Taylor against Houston. You can only start 2-3 running backs on FanDuel or even DraftKings. Is there a chance these guys start to cancel each other out and we're not dealing with so much chalk at the position, Kyra?
Actually, what ends up happening is a lot of those low dollar plays become so chalky. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the projected ownership of a couple of these guys, and a lot of these cheap dollar plays are here at the top tier. So that's why, you know, you could take an alternative route. And I think this is a really good idea this week to pay up at the position and, you know, grab somebody like Joe Mixon or have like Joe Mixon. I mean, I don't know that you want Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler in the same game, but if you want to just pay up and get, you know, be crazy, Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon, and don't pay down at the position, that's going to give you leverage above everybody else, because everybody else is doing what we've been doing, is where you go for the value play. So if you want to get different, that's a really good way to do that and have an advantage above the field. When everybody zigs, you got to zag. It's kind of how it works in DFS. And what you think is going to happen never does. So, yeah. You got to take your chances and do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. You don't want to be super chalky.
Clinton, if you have anything to add to that, go right ahead, and then you can lead us right into your deep sea dive at running back too.
Yeah, no, I agree. The more lineups I've set this week, though, that's the route that I've taken. Is last night I was playing around with it. And I just for fun, I put in a lineup that has Minshew as the starting quarterback, just to see what happens.
Yeah,
I got Taylor and Mixon in there, and then still some really nice, value plays at the wide receiver spot later. Guys like Van Jefferson, people like that, even Devontae Parker now that he's playing. So I just think there's some odd strategies this week that it's the slate itself is going to look interesting after it's all said and done, and to see what lineups are the ones that won that. But yeah, I mean, my deep sea dive is probably going to end up chalky. Maybe, I haven't looked at the percentages on him, but I have Jamal Williams in there against the Vikings. They're equally the Vikings defense. I mean, I'm a Vikings fan, and it's hard to watch.
It's bad.
I think Detroit, game script wise, is going to do what San Fran did last week and give up on. I mean, they didn't really give up on trying to pass, but they just turned around and gave it to Mitchell, and I think that's what's going to happen to Jamal Williams this week. And if you want to get even deeper, you could maybe Jamar Jefferson for the Lions. If you really want to slap a guy in there that a lot of people aren't going to play, but he could still see, quite a bit of work. That would be a guy. But Jamal Williams is my guy. Vikings are the 10th most, points against running backs. Eli Mitchell tore him apart last week. I think that's the game script for Detroit. They're not going to put the ball in, make Goff try to win a game. I don't think so. I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit with Jamal.
Perfect. Kyra, before I kick over to you, we have a great question from Mojo, and it happens to lead into one of your deep sea dives. If Hendo can't go, is Sony Michel going to change roster construction based on his salary? Because obviously they're playing the Jaguars. That you would figure that's going to favor the run quite a bit, especially in the late game there. And I also want to just kind of throw out, you guys didn't talk about, and I'm going to kick to you guys later on, so this is just a little prep work. So Kyra, I want you to go over your deep sea dives, kind of touching on Mojo's question. You guys didn't talk about Fournette or Miles Sanders much, and I'd like to have a little discussion with them before we switch the position too. But Kyra, go ahead and talk about your deep sea dives because it touches on Mojo's question.
Yeah, so I'll just skip right to Sony Michel. Is like, yes, that actually does change the landscape of the whole thing, because I'm looking at here, he's already gaining some rostership. So he's not going to be a low owned guy at $4,300. Yeah, you're getting super cheap there, and that's a great way to save, because Sony Michel, we've seen him produce in that offense without Darrell Henderson. So, I mean, he's a great play, but he is going to become super chalky, and that does suck. Unfortunately, people are a little too smart. They do pay attention to things, and Sony Michel will be heavily rostered. But if you want to save money, he is a good play. Even as far as Antonio Gibson, he's somebody that's just so cheap and has just become super chalky. I'm just a little confused why his price tag is even what it is, to be honest, because he's looked great over the last 3 weeks. He's seen more usage, more carries. You got no J.D. McKissick in this one, and it's a great matchup versus the Raiders. And again, they're another game with a high over/under of 49.5. So he's really a no-brainer play, but he's also become just so chalky. All these really low dollar value plays really have. So that's why it honestly is good to pivot to Leonard Fournette. It is good to pivot to Miles Sanders, who people are afraid of, because I know he carried an injury tag going into this, but he's playing against the New York Jets, who get absolutely just tore apart by running backs. And in a game with no Jalen Hurts to take away those rushing attempts, I think Miles Sanders is a great play that a lot of people are going to really, he's low on. He's not super rostered in DraftKings and FanDuel lineups. And same thing with Leonard Fournette. Like I said earlier, is, Tom Brady is going to be the play for a lot of people. They think, he's just going to light up the Atlanta Falcons, which he could. But, we saw it happen last week where we thought that he was going to light up the whole entire slate too, and it ended up being Leonard Fournette. So,
yeah.
If you always want to get different, especially in tournaments, you have to get different. So those are some great ways and some great options to do so as well.
Couldn't just go ahead and throw your thoughts out on some of those running backs.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. If you want to throw Sanders and Fournette in there, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Personally, I won't touch Michel. It doesn't matter what his price is. I think there's nothing there. I think the Rams are going to throw the ball.
Okay.
If you want that offense, go with Van Jefferson. I don't know what Odell's status is yet today. I haven't seen anything.
Still as of this morning, questionable.
Okay. I think he was expected. I think like Schefter or someone said he's expected to play. Okay. So
go ahead.
No, please go. I was just going to say I just want to throw something out because you brought up OBJ. Yeah. We talked a little bit about this on our Start Sit show yesterday, and this kind of plays into the Darrell Henderson thing. And I know you said you're completely against Sony. In a game where it's likely to be a blowout, are we concerned that some of these injury tag guys could find the sideline quicker in the game? And so that would be something where I know you're against Sony, but with Hendo, if they're up 28 at halftime, is it Sony the entire second half and that still doesn't entice you?
Yeah, I just it's a personal thing. I don't know what it is about him. I just don't like playing him. I mean, I'm not gonna play him.
Yeah, I like Sony for the fact that I think that McVay is really going to use him, especially inside the 5. That's somewhere where he's going to give he's going to give that ball to Michelle if he's in there. So I like his touchdown upside. That's the reason why I like him, and he is so cheap. So yeah, I'm still cool with playing Sony, but he is getting chalky as the day goes on.
Perfect. Guys, I think that's enough on running back, so we're just going to recap. We are avoiding Naji Harris, and you guys didn't necessarily say to avoid him, but I do want to throw out that you guys were both a little concerned that this might not go the way Alexander Madison thinks it's going to go. Your favorite plays of the week, Joe Mixon, James Conner, Eli Mitchell, all wonderful plays, and I'm even going to throw in the deep sea dive, Antonio Gibson. He's a steal at deep sea dive. He should be one of the higher dollar plays. But if you're looking for low plays, while Clinton doesn't agree, Kyra says you can go ahead and start Sony Michel, Jamal Williams on the Detroit side of things for Clinton. And those are the running backs. We're going to jump to wide receiver. We're going to start with Chalkburn, a high dollar or high roster guy who can might burn you this week. Clinton, I'm going to start with you. This is a guy who's been burning people over and over again. It's funny that we keep trusting him, but I think it's that constant thing of this is the week, this is the week, this is the week, and maybe it's not with DK Metcalf.
Yeah, what I don't understand is the price on the guy. Like, so what is it? It's been since week 7 or something like that. Yeah, week 7 since he's had over 50 yards. Nothing, that. Yeah, and it's just, why is he 7,300 and 6,700 on there? He should be lower. There's just no reason for him to be the price I did that. So if you're touching him, you're really taking the risk of, Wilson's going to find him, but he's been throwing the Lockett. They're throwing Lockett down the field, and DK seems like he kind of whines a little bit, and then he's sitting on the sideline. I don't trust him with anything. And I wouldn't ever spend the money on him right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not getting the discount for his poor play. Mm-hmm. So
just like with some of the running backs, Gibson, Eli Mitchell, they're not rewarding their positive play. So there you take the value because they're not doing that. So
there you go. Find the value where they're giving it to you, basically. Take what you're given, like Joe Burrow does when he throws to T. Higgins. Kyra, you were not afraid to shy away from giving us a Chalkburn at wide receiver, though.
This one hurt.
Yeah. So I always, I don't love the wide receiver position this week.
I have to say that Kyra has hated since I've switched Chalkburn to this because I make her pick on players, and it's come back to bite her. Let me throw that out. So I take full blame for putting Kyra in awkward situations every Sunday. But talk to us about why you hate Adam Thielen so he can go score 2 touchdowns.
That's why I didn't dare give. I didn't even dare give a running back Chalkburn because I'm like, you know what? None of these are bad plays. And again, here we go. I hate the Chalkburn, but it's going to be Adam Thielen. I guess I'll pick on him this week just because, he's going to prove me wrong because he's proven what's untrue time and time again. The touchdown regression isn't happening for Adam Thielen. No. It's annoying. He's just defying all odds of what we've been taught and know. He scores touchdowns, but when he doesn't, he is going to burn you. He's not so involved in this offense that, he could save you the day on his targets and receptions alone. And in this game, I highly doubt that it becomes so competitive to the point that, Thielen's just going to need to do a ton of work in this game. So this is really just me cherry picking and forcing the Chalkburn. It's going to be Adam Thielen for me.
There you go, Clinton.
And he's pretty expensive. I mean, because he has been playing super well. I'm just going
tied for the league in receiving touchdowns.
Yeah, so. He's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you got to spend money for a Vikings receiver anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'd rather Justin Jefferson if I'm paying that high at this point. You know what I mean? Because at least he'll save you with the receptions and all that. He's the wide receiver 6 on the whole slate, Adam Thielen. So that's pretty damn expensive for him.
That is high. Yeah, wide receiver 6 next to Thielen is not something you expect. Clinton, I would feel horrible if I didn't let you rebut as a Minnesota guy. So.
No, actually, I rebut only because it's a Vikings thing. But the play for the Vikings this week is Jefferson at wide receiver. You're right. Thielen has not had a good game. He has 3 touchdowns against the Lions. 2 only.
Wow.
since he started his career, started playing against them. And I think he's only had a handful, if any, no 100-yard games. So, you were onto something with that. I don't think he's the play this week. Watch him get 3 touchdowns. But Jefferson, he has for whatever reason, even he's only been in the league for 2 years, Justin Jefferson's a guy against the Lions. He's had like 150-yard games, 2 touchdowns, things like that. Even earlier this year, he had a big game against them.
There you go.
I agree with you on that. Yep.
Perfect. Before we jump in, I just want to throw out, if you've been with us since the beginning, we've been trying to mess around with some version of like chalk something or another, and it's missed every time. If for nothing else, that it pisses Kyra off every week. I love what this segment does, and she's so right about everything else. At least this gives me an opportunity to make her look better.
It forces me to try to like take a chance to be wrong on somebody that's like, but
well, that's why you adapt. You have to find something that works for the show, keep it entertaining, and most of the entertaining is just Kyra telling everybody how much she hates this segment, and I'm good with it. So, Clint, I want to go back to you. Talk to me about your favorite wide receiver this week. He's one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. So anytime I get to hear good things about him, sure, I'm good with it. So.
Yeah, Godwin. His price is expensive, 76 and 66. FanDuel, DraftKings. However, since 2018 against Atlanta, he has 9 touchdowns. He just rips Atlanta apart. Not a ton of yards, but he'll get those touchdowns. Like he's kind of like a Thielen, in that aspect for them. It's just, I don't usually spend a ton of money on wide receivers, but Godwin is a guy. Godwin and Justin Jefferson are the 2 guys I would look at if you're spending the money on receivers this week. So I like him a lot this week.
Absolutely perfect. Kyra, I'll let you go ahead and chime in and then talk about your favorite plays.
Anybody I love this week was either too expensive or it was Chris Godwin. And, I've got to give it to you. You're the first person within 13 weeks to beat me to the show, Doc.
There you go.
That's pretty good. You're lucky I'm sick this week.
I was going to say, even better is he did it 2 weeks in a row, but last week didn't really count. So.
Yeah, right? Oh, man. No one ever beats me to it, so I was a little bit pissed about that, but I'm gonna let it slide.
I was too excited. I'm like, I could do this the day he puts it out, but I'll wait. I'm happy you're excited about it. It forced me to get different for one, so I like that as well. So my favorite play this week is going to be Deontay Johnson. Just because I'm not crazy about the wide receivers on this slate, and I'll take the consistency here with Deontay Johnson, regardless of how ugly Big Ben has looked out there or the Steelers offense as a whole this season. Johnson, just no matter what, it's like death, taxes, and 13 targets for him. Yep. It's a weekly basis thing. He's had not one single digit performance all season long. Yeah, he could use some more touchdowns, but he's a safe play this week and every week. The Ravens aren't a secondary that we should be afraid of by any means. They're not scary, and this is a hard-fought divisional matchup, so they're going to need Deontay Johnson. I even like Chase Claypool this week too. We talked about it. I think that this is going to be a game where they need to pass the ball a lot, so I think Deontay Johnson is super safe at his price range. He's a good play.
Yeah, and you have a honorable mention in there that I love to see on a list. So go ahead and talk to me a little bit about Hunter Renfro too.
Yep.
Oh, me? Oh, do I?
Yeah, you put him on there.
You put a couple guys.
I didn't even realize. See?
Oh yeah, see, she cheats so much she doesn't even realize it, and then when I actually acknowledge it and enjoy it.
Another person who's been just kind of like a king of consistency has been Hunter Renfro, and I think that we don't like to play him because he's. Just to be obvious here, he's just a white little wide receiver, and we're just like, you know what? We don't think that they could kill it every week, but he's like a low end Cooper Kupp almost, or something like that. Over the last, let's see, when's the last time he even won? 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 of his last 5 games, he's put up over double-digit points. His salary really doesn't move too much. I mean, he's $5,800 this week, but he's definitely a great option to pay down and be able to fit some other really guys in and keep your consistency.
Yeah. Speaking of paying down.
And he's a good stack with Derek Carr. I do like him with Derek Carr.
Yeah, that's a very good stack. Yep. Every week you can do it, I think, for the rest of the year.
So glad to hear that. Now, what I want to throw out is, Kyra, you said, I don't really like the wide receiver slate this week. And then you gave me 2 guys at favorite and didn't even realize you did it. And 3 guys at deep sea dive. So I'm going to let you end it with the deep sea dive. So I'm going to go to Clinton because you've already talked about him a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I think he's a great play. And I think people, because they see the big name of OBJ, they forget Van Jefferson has been there and has put in the time. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 5,800 on FanDuel, 5,300 on DraftKings, 9 targets last week. Obviously Woods went down a couple weeks ago. People are excited about Van Jefferson. Then they signed Beckham. To me, I don't think it matters. I think the Rams throw the ball enough, and that Stafford is going to find Van Jefferson if he holds onto the ball. Jacksonville, 10th most against wide receivers. I think there is a lot of value. She listed, several guys there, which there is a lot of value later in that in the wide receiver spots this week, and goes back to what we kind of talked about earlier, where you can play the expensive running backs because there's a Van Jefferson, there's a Russell Gage, guys like that. If you want Parker's active, you can play him. He's super cheap this week. Guys like, you can just throw those guys in there this week, and I don't think there's going to be a bad production. Renfro's a great one. He's going to get 10 catches for probably 90 to 100 yards.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kyra had him as a favorite play, but he could have easily qualified his deep sea dive with no issue whatsoever. So,
Yep. And the Lions, if you want to look at Josh Reynolds, I think you maybe have him on there. But yeah, he's money against the Vikings probably.
Yeah, and I kind of brought this up in my waiver wire article. Josh Reynolds is the only wide receiver that Jared Goff had any previous chemistry with. So now and he led the team in targets on Thanksgiving. So there's something to that. You may actually see Josh Reynolds start to perform in a game where they may have to throw the ball. But Clinton, you brought up something interesting. Last week, we saw San Francisco abandon the pass very quickly against Minnesota. If we see something similar against Detroit, Reynolds is a guy where a lot of people might be paying down thinking they're cheating the system, and he could actually end up burning them in the long run.
Right, and that could be game script. Yeah, and I don't know if that was what San Francisco was doing there. I think they did the same thing a couple years ago when the Vikings beat the Saints, in New Orleans or whatever, and then they went to San Fran and lost, but they crammed it down the Vikings' throats with Robert Mostert too. So I just think it's a thing they do against them. But
and I also don't think it's the best idea for any of us to put San Fran and Detroit on the same level. Right. Kyra, talk to me about your deep sea dives. Your first two guys are club fantasy favorites. Just a little behind the scenes. T.Y. Hilton is eternally our play of the week when he is playing Houston, and then Deshaun Jackson in revenge games. Me and one of my co-hosts are actually facing each other in a dynasty matchup this week, and we have joked and we put them next to each other in the matchup that it all comes down to my T.Y. Hilton versus his Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, T.Y. Hilton was like my claim to fame in DFS, as I had him as the play last year at some point, and everyone was like, "Holy crap! How did she know to play T.Y. Hilton?" I mean, because he's T.Y. Houston, he owns the Texans. So that's really about as far as my analysis goes. With T.Y. Hilton, it makes no sense. It's just one of those things. It just happens. He just owns them. He came in there the one year with like a clown mask on or something like that. He knows it. He knows that's he has their number. Another really fun narrative, I guess you could go with, is the Deshaun Jackson revenge games. He always seems to blow up against any of his former teams, and it doesn't take much for Deshaun Jackson to get there. I mean, it's inevitable. He scores a touchdown, and anytime he does, it's usually a bomb. It's not like some goal line touchdown. It's always some 70-yard huge thing, and like I said, the Raiders, they're passing the ball a ton. They are, but they've had that regression as far as touchdowns. They're looking for the touchdowns. So I think that he's a good candidate, deep sleeper, dart throw on. And I do like Josh Reynolds. Minnesota's going to be able to contain TJ Hawkinson. They're actually really good against tight ends. I was going to say no Taylor Swift, no DeAndre, no DeAndre Swift, no Taylor.
She won't be there either.
Yeah, she's probably not.
He's not in attendance this week. So, that means that Josh Reynolds should have a great game. And he did. He jumped right into that lineup. Came right in, had an 88% snap share, and became their wide receiver one. So he's a very cheap dart throw, and he's likely to play good enough to hit his value.
Yeah, friend of the show, Elixirs, tunes in every Wednesday with us. He knows we love T.Y. Hilton. He's going against him this week, so he feels that his matchup is already over. Sorry to do it to you, Elixirs. I think those are great deep sea dives at wide receiver. Clinton, I want to give you a chance. She talked about so many guys. Do you have any opinions you want to throw in on those guys?
No, I just want to touch on the Hilton thing a little bit. Ty, I think he's a worth a stab this week against Houston. I have a show on Wednesdays, and this week I had Chris Robin, Detroit Beastie, on with me.
Been on the show twice, friend of the show.
We were setting an owner, one of the fantasy sites called Owner's Box, and we were setting a lineup on there, and I had Hilton in there, and he just destroyed me. He's I will never touch Hilton. And I'm like, I don't think he's a good play this week, but we'll see.
Well, now we have to throw that in his face because Club Fantasy can't can't allow any T.Y. Houston disparagement. So we'll go at Chris on that one, all in good fun.
Oh, if he has a big game, I'll go after him. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, we all will. Now I know.
Yeah.
So now I have to out of pure obligation. No, Kyra and I have a great group chat with Chris. We always have fun in there. So we're going to recap wide receiver. We're talking chalk burn. We are talking avoiding Adam Thielen and DK Metcalf. We are playing Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, and then in between is Hunter Renfro because he's so cheap, but you need to be playing him. Deep sea dive, Deshaun Jackson, T.Y. Hilton, Josh Reynolds, Van Jefferson, and Clinton has hit this a few times. And you guys put together a nice little thing earlier in the show. This might be a week where you want to pay up at running back. And with the cheapness of these wide receivers, this is going to allow you to do that. So don't be afraid to plug some of these cheaper guys in your lineup. Maybe not too many. We're going to jump over to tight end. And this is the first I've ever seen this on the show. And Kyra, you mentioned you liked him, but you put him as chalk burn. But then Clinton, he's your deep sea dive. So I'm just going to let you guys talk a little bit about Foster Moreau before we get into anything else. So Kyra, I'm going to start with you because we're in the chalk burn section, but you had mentioned you liked him. I'm guessing you're just worried he might be a little too chalky. So.
Yeah, and that's really it is. I get it that he's a great play, and at his cheap price tag, that's the thing. Everybody and their mother's going to play him. So no thanks. I rather just, stay woke, stay different. And while he has produced, he's still not Darren Waller. I can see this being a game where, he's a heavily owned player who just doesn't do much. His Luke Wilson comparison on Player Profiler doesn't by any means twist my arm. So I rather just pivot off of him because I think he's almost like automatic for people this week. It's like they're like, oh, I want the Darren Waller 2.0 at this cheap price. And I think there's just some great pivot options, even in the punt price range. Like you don't have to pay up a ton of money to get someone really good. I still have other options that you can go with that are going to help you out. But I think he's just going to be too chalky, and I could see everybody owning him and him putting up like a 5-point stat line or something stupid, and he doesn't really do much. So you're going to want to get different there so you could have the advantage over everybody else.
All right, Clinton, tell her why she's wrong.
Yeah, and I don't even know if she's wrong. I
she's wrong.
It was a big disparagement. I was watching, just reading people's Twitters about Foster Moreau early in the week when, people were pretty sure that Waller wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
My thought process behind it, he has played well when Waller's not there. My concern is the targets. Are they going to throw the ball to him? Or are they going to throw it to Renfro and Deshaun Jackson? But the price
or Zay Jones.
Right. Yeah. I always hope for him, and then he doesn't.
I love that we've just now named 4 pass catchers for the Raiders and still not mentioned Bryan Edwards.
I know. He was the Randy Moss darling of
that's just not happening. But keep going, Clinton. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why I look at it is that price at $2,700 on DraftKings, and you just keep scrolling down and down and down and down, and there he is. And I'm okay with throwing one overly chalk person in my lineups during the week. And it goes, like I said, back to the play of getting those potential running backs in there. If you want to overpay for them or whatever, and that's what it comes down to. I love some of the other options there, and I know we'll talk about them. There's, 2 or 3 guys there that, I think are money plays this week in that lower price range. So,
yeah. Whenever you were talking about scrolling, I always like to joke that people's thumbs get too tired. They can't go that far to find Foster. So, before we get into the positive, let's stick with the negative. George Kittle is a chalk burn this week.
Yeah. Is kind of like a Naji Harris kind of thing. San Fran, Seattle, even though they've been terrible this year on D, they have played Kittle fairly well. I mean, this year, he had a four catch, 40-yard game against them earlier in the year. But 62 under a FanDuel, 59 on DraftKings. I put him on there because of the other cheap options at tight end this week. I just think why waste your money at that expensive tight end spot? And I think the game script's going to go to Mitchell and Ayuk. I think Seattle focuses on shutting Kittle down and then making San Fran beat him on the ground, and then potentially Ayuk or even Jawan Jennings. That's another wide receiver we didn't talk about, but he is a sneaky play this week at wide receiver. I know back to Kittle, but yeah, just too expensive for me. Just like Naji, there's other options. So. Yeah,
it's funny because I saw a lot of people talking up Brandon Ayuk earlier this week, but you're always worried when they see these new wide receivers kind of step into a role, and Jawan Jennings looked good for the last couple of weeks. And so
Vikings played well against Vikings.
Yeah, and that's with Deebo Samuel fully in the lineup, playing essentially as a running back, not quite, but basically. And now you could see a much bigger role. And he's dirt cheap. I remember scrolling down. You had to go very far to find Juwan Jennings when I was looking
I'm
for
in a
him
few
on
spots.
FanDuel. So yeah. So let's get back to positive. Let's go ahead and talk to Kyra about her favorite tight end play of the week.
Yeah, and I just want to say George Kittle has actually never had a touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah. I guess that's the thing, which now naturally he will because I spoke it into the universe. Yeah. But that is a little known fact about him as he has never had a touchdown against them. But so my favorite play this week is going to be actually Logan Thomas. Actually, give me the other tight end in that Raiders game being Logan Thomas. Yeah. The Raiders are actually terrible versus opposing tight ends. They've allowed the second most fantasy points per game to the position, and Washington loves to use their tight ends. He was fresh off the IR last week, and he saw 81% of the snaps, which likely will increase as he gets healthier. And before the injury, Thomas was in there for 100% of the snaps, so they want to get him in there. He stays heavily involved. He's a solid red zone target for them, and he's poised to have a good game here. He's easy money to me, and he's not going to be super chalky because people are so focused on Foster that they kind of forget, hey, Logan Thomas is actually the better play here.
Well, they took a touchdown away from him last week. I mean,
right.
What is the catch? It looked like a catch to me.
And that might be why people forget, who Logan Thomas is. I mean, the Washington football team made Ricky Seals-Jones relevant for a little while there. Yeah. So, I think Logan Thomas is much better than our RSJ. So
yeah, and that's something I noticed when I was looking at Logan Thomas coming back is you saw tight end targets increase after Logan Thomas went out. And I'm not saying this is against Logan Thomas. I love Logan Thomas. What I'm saying is Washington started involving the tight end more. So even the Logan Thomas you saw in the first 3 weeks of the season is not the Logan Thomas you're going to see now. He's likely to see more volume. But Clinton, you hit on a great fact, and this is why I love having great fantasy analysts on the show. He had a touchdown taken away last week, and a lot of people, that doesn't show up anywhere in the stat box.
Yeah, they need an outlet of those missed things, you know what I mean?
Exactly. That's actually an excellent point. I wonder if that exists, and if it doesn't, there's money to be made there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Those almost things that didn't happen that we'd be talking about someone completely differently if this happened. They were a penalty away from it.
Well, yeah. How many times do we see a running back break a 35-yard run in one? And I understand there are bad holding calls, but you'll see a wide receiver on the other side of the field hold where there was no reason for that wide receiver to hold. So
they break your heart, those ones, but they are interesting to know. It's what could have been, so.
Exactly. And Kyra, you mentioned 13 targets for Deontay Johnson every week. If they're not going to Deontay Johnson, they're likely going to Clinton's favorite play at tight end.
Yeah, Pat Freiermuth. He's just seen it takes those rookie tight ends a while to get going. But they've found that obviously you can throw him in the red zone. What does he have? 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns this year?
Yep, yeah, it hasn't taken long for the muth to get loose.
No. And, snap share, it was at 76% last week. It's between 60 and 70 every week, percentage-wise. They're going to throw him the ball in the red zone if they get there. It'd be nice to see him throw the ball in the middle of the field a little more. Let him run loose in the middle of the field and see what he can do. But at the price, it is still criminally underrated for me at that tight end spot because the tight end spot is, unless you're getting Andrews or potentially Kittle or Kelsey, you go lower, and they're keeping Pat down there. Like you said, Logan Thomas this week. Pat and Logan Thomas are my 2 favorite plays. And go back to Foster if you want to stay away from the chalk deep dive and you really want to deep dive. Brevin Jordan's a guy that I've been watching, and I put that in my I had a waiver article on Monday. That Pat, I think Brevin Jordan's gonna have he's the next Freiermuth rise. Everybody talked about Kyle Pitts, but when I'm in my dynasty leagues, I was taking Freiermuth and Brevin Jordan late. In that spot waiting for those guys to break out, and it's slowly happening. And I think those are the guys you're going to start looking at for the rest of the season that could potentially win you money or win your leagues. So
I'm guessing the CEO of Club Fantasy is not in the chat with us because he is the biggest Brevin Jordan guy I know, was pumping him up all preseason. And all this wonderful Brevin Jordan talk would have certainly got Josh in the chat. He's probably sleeping in and watching us later. What a slacker.
Yeah, honestly.
So we talked a little bit about Foster Moreau, and there's clearly some debate. But Kyra, you have a deep sea dive that a lot of people probably isn't quite sure exists as a real human being. So go ahead and explain to everyone who in the world this Irishman is.
Yeah, the Irishman, James O'Shaughnessy.
Oh, yeah.
And talk about scrolling down. I mean, he's $2,600 on DraftKings. But, Jacksonville just keeps losing their playmakers. They have no Dan Arnold, no Jamal Agnew, and, just taking it back all the way to the beginning of the season, no DJ Chark. And in James O'Shaughnessy's 2 full games this season, he actually had 13 targets, 9 receptions for 77 yards. Lawrence has to get this ball to somebody, okay? And the matchup isn't the worst. The Los Angeles Rams rank 11th versus opposing fantasy tight ends, and I'd be willing to bet that they'll be playing from behind in this game. So whatever, garbage time still counts. He is involved. I mean, they're not really doing much with Laviska Shenault. I think today I learned that he has the least amount of fantasy points for the amount of attempts that he's got. It's bad. It's sad because Laviska Shenault, we thought of him as this Swiss Army knife, he's going to be this great thing for fantasy, and it's just not happening. So yeah, we're rolling out James.
He's the Swiss Army knife you got from Wish.com.
Yeah, you thought it looked good on the site, but it's just not the quality that you're hoping it would be. So yeah, let's pivot off of the super shocky Fossum route. You could go with James O'Shaughnessy. I mean, I don't think he's going to break the slate by any means, but I think he's going to do enough for a punt option that you won't be too disappointed.
I love it. So we're going to recap tight end. So just to quickly go over it, Foster Moreau, Kyra had him as a chalk burn mainly because she's afraid he'll be too chalky. Clinton loves him as a deep sea dive because he's going to be involved in the offense. But we are avoiding George Kittle. We are playing Logan Thomas, Pratt Fairmouth, and James O'Shaughnessy if you're diving deep at the tight end position. But she's right, because one thing you have to remember is Dan Arnold was a fantasy sweetheart for about 6 weeks, and that's because of how much they were throwing the ball to the tight end in that system. And O'Shaughnessy had just come off the IR. Josh had even mentioned on one of our Wednesday shows, watch what happens here. It kind of played out in the worst possible way where they lost Arnold, but now O'Shaughnessy is going to step right into that role. You have to start a defense, guys. And so we call it David and Goliath, because typically when you're building your defense in your daily lineup, you are choosing between a very high dollar play or a very low dollar play. You're either going super chalky or you're getting in whoever you can get in to make that damn lineup work so you can click submit. So Clinton, go ahead and start with your, actually just walk us through both of them, your high dollar play, your low dollar play on defense.
Yeah. Rams, I think, are the obvious high dollar play this week. Jacksonville, I don't think Jacksonville's going to score more than 10 points, if any points at all.
I think they have the lowest implied total on the week when I was
I know that was a super obvious play.
Yeah.
There's
nothing wrong with obvious.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, and they're decent. It's not, you could probably afford them this week. And then my David would be the Dolphins against the Giants. They're go backup quarterback. I don't know if Daniel Jones is that much better anyway. And the Giants, they're not good. Even with Saquon back, it looks like they are getting some wide receivers back. I don't know if Sterling Shepard's going to play today,
I think he's still out.
Yeah, I saw him and Tony as 0.
I don't know what the hell is wrong with Sterling Shepard. Why didn't he go on the IR? He's been
well. They
out.
could have done the same with him and Tony. So it's very strange. I feel these teams. These teams have been handling the IR very weird this season. So
a 3-game or whatever. Yeah, exactly. I like the Dolphins this week. I think they even might. The Giants might not even get 10, 13 points. It's another good play. If you can keep the points you start with, you're set. If you can get 8 to 12 out of your defense.
That's a great point. Kyra, talk to me.
So my Goliath this week is going to be the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Chicago Bears. The Arizona Cardinals defense has been phenomenal all year, and they're not the most highly priced. So I think that they're a great option, and without having to pay up for the Rams or the Colts or something like that. Bears obviously create a lot of turnovers. Not much to say there. You already know why. My David is actually going to be the Detroit. Not the Detroit Lions. It's going to be the Minnesota Vikings.
Do not play the Detroit Lions.
It's going to be the Minnesota Vikings against the Detroit Lions. Again, obvious reasons. I think Minnesota's defense is good enough, and the Lions are bad enough to create turnovers, create situations where, if you want to pay down, there's not a lot of great pay down options this week. There's really not. They don't go that low. I think the lowest I would pay down for is the Vikings.
Yeah, it's super interesting because the Lions, there was that game a few weeks ago where we expected them to have all this offense. I think it wasn't against the Bears. It was the one before that. And I think Jared Goff had 60 yards in the third quarter. It's just disgusting. And
God,
that's not a bad offense to pick on. So just recapping defense, you are playing the Cardinals, you are playing the Vikings, not playing the Lions. You're playing the Rams, you're playing the Dolphins. We did it. We made it to the end of the slate. Clinton, you've been amazing. This was one of the best shows we've done. We killed it on time, which is just absolutely perfect.
I don't overtalk. Sorry.
But no, you did such a great job. Please let everyone know where they can find your work. It's something I like to tune into every week, and I don't just say that. I honestly read your stuff. So
thanks. Yeah. Twitter's at Clinton Holmgren. All my work's at idpguys.org. I do a weekly DFS article called the DFS Minute. There's also a YouTube short for it. And then on Wednesdays, I do the DFS Time Show, also on YouTube. I do write some Dynasty articles as well at the beginning of the season before I started all my DFS stuff. And I'll, get some more out here as the season, gets towards the end and, things like that, where we kind of shift our focus to that Dynasty off season. But yeah, I'll be doing DFS work throughout the playoffs and everything. It never stops. And that's the great thing about it.
Perfect. As I say, we always joke about this is as we start to get towards the fantasy playoffs, your redraft team might lose, but your DFS team is always going to be there for you.
Yes.
Kyra, parting words for the people.
So I just want to let everybody know this upcoming week, I'm going to be on Front Yard Fantasy's game show on Thursday. That's always a lot of fun. It's something that I like to do that has no thought process whatsoever. Just get on there. Well, that's what they tell me is don't prepare for it. I'm like, okay. But anyways, so I'll be doing that on Thursday, and fear not, Kyra's Cash Grabs is coming back this week for your regularly scheduled programming on Saturday. Kicking off the rest there. I know I left you hanging the last 2 weeks, but being sick has honestly kicked my ass and left me hanging. So it's just really got me good. So I'll be back to that this week. Lots to look forward to this week. Good luck, everybody. I hope you win $1 million out there.
There you go.
Get rich.
Yeah. Kyra, check the website, clubfantasyffl.com. We have tons of articles. We do waivers on Tuesday, a DFS matchup report on Wednesday. We do a betting article called Blurred Lines by Joel Worth. We have a Thrive article for Thrive Fantasy from Chris Molina, Josh's confidence plays, and then, of course, Kyra's Cash Grabs. I would normally tell you only have an hour to read it, but there is no article on the website. Just go back and rewatch this show. Please hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. We want to grow this channel, and we want to give you guys autographed merch. Every time we hit a subscriber milestone, and we're pushing towards 300 followers right now, Josh gives something away. Josh spent way too much money on Pristine Auction this past summer, and now he has to give these things away. He's contractually obligated. Please lessen his load. Hit subscribe. On that channel, you'll find our Wednesday show every week where we recap and talk about the following week. Every Saturday, we do a start-sit show. We obviously have this show on Sundays. Plus, I do a stream of the week and Thrive video every week. So there's a ton of content on there, and if you hit subscribe, you're not going to miss any of it. So we will be back next week. We're going to have Travis Strickland, a former writer for the Fantasy Footballers, back with us. And if you've gotten everything, congratulations. Go set those lineups. Get ready for inactives. They're going to drop here in about 5 minutes. If you need more content, hop over to the IBT Media YouTube page. They do their DFS tailgate show with Nate and Bo. That kicks off here in about 5 minutes. They're going to take great care of you while we all go set our lineups. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much to Clinton. Kyra, it's great to have you back, and good luck this week, everybody.
Good luck.